Wow, it was great. Yeah. I meant to board it too, like twice last week. It's okay. My brother. But I really want to do it. And then it has like how. Well, it pages well. I'm always trying to get page in my good grades.
It's a very small space, and I think we do.
There's some really cool shit.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
And there's all kinds of cool shit. When you said that, I was like, I know you meant, I knew vandalism. There's a lot of really good restaurants in here. You can be paid. I'm trying to get paid.
Thank you.
I just know what time.
It might be necessary.
Sorry. He's gonna be started.
Sign seating first.
No, we're not.
You're giving us a pre.
No, after, I feel like
We're half an hour in.
the whole recording thing, I feel like the hires thing. I don't know what you're about. Oh, right. But so, yeah, like, that's scary, even if.
Yeah. Would you, I'll send out some in Devon. Yeah.
GPS should be a completely different.
I don't have a.
I don't know why. You're probably into Denver, should have.
I'm like, well, we can't.
It's like against myself, I'm like,
It's like your video.
I think about my favorite set of coins.
We have two on one and a queen and then on the couch.
I have major anxiety writing. Like, where is this?
That's limited, really.
They all know that. That's why every time there's something that says, homeless planning council, I can not do that.
And then I just live at my parents.
Like all the one-way streets and stuff like that.
Ellen has to work remotely 3 days.
Parking
All right, one more thing.
And plus, I'm only ever been in.
Is there?
Then you're gonna have to lap the place. I like city walk and bus and metro.
But I forgot, even forgot the shit.
Smart.
It should be on. You're not.
This is like the train thing.
Yeah.
Public
You know our house.
You have to get out.
But Michael, he came down Friday. He and his friend, they went and dropped him. Showed me a video. The lead singer of this band that they ran. Took his phone and was like singing Sweet Child. My kids come.
You good? Okay. Carrie, we're gonna get started.
I'm ready. Thank you for my attention.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Matt Eccles. I'm the director of the Delaware State Housing Authority. We're going to do introductions in a second, and I think we have a few people participating on remotely today. I also just wanted to give you quickly an update on sort of where we're headed today. We don't have as clear of an agenda because I think today is much more about conversation and sort of mapping out our path forward. So the way I've described it, I think at recent meetings is I'm very much looking at the work of this collaborative in phases. And I think hopefully today we are sort of wrapping up that first phase of the collaborative's work. And though the executive order that forms this collaborative doesn't ask for a report until sometime in January, we're hoping that we can come to an agreement on a report that we can submit sort of describing the work that we've done over the past several months and our recommendations moving forward, which I think is important to get done now because of the timing of the budget formation process and the upcoming legislative session. So that's what we're hoping. That's sort of task number one to accomplish today. And then task number two, so you can start thinking about it, is sort of where do we go from here? This collaborative was created in a way I think that was very much intended to get us to today in terms of those recommendations. for this upcoming budget and legislative cycle. I think we can, in a phase 2, start to break apart more of the work of the collaborative into the component parts of supporting people experiencing homelessness, and think more broadly about sort of longer term objectives and how we get that work done. So that's why you're here today. I want to thank you as always for being here. There is chocolate this time. I'm told, don't be alarmed, some of these are green. I don't know how they make chocolate green, but apparently
Are they from
the good people at
Today, back in the day.
apparently the good people at Kit Kat have figured it out. So
Yeah.
don't be alarmed if you open one of those. And the other ones are regular brown chocolate. And of course, some the others, as we get into the Halloween season, we'll ask all of you to bring the leftovers of your trick-or-treating, and everyone can take a week in a meeting to get rid of that cabinet. I think we still probably have Halloween candy somewhere in a top shelf from last year. And if you trick-or-treat at our house, you may get one of those pieces. So let's start with introductions, and let's go around the table here.
Jessica Klein, Chief of Planning Research, Manager for Department.
Mary Casey, Newcastle County.
Rachel Stucker, Housing Alliance, Delaware. Remy Nauman, Sussex County.
Susan Kent, Delaware Continuum of Care.
Review Department of Education on behalf of Secretary Martin.
Matt Eccles.
Alex Witz. Robin Christensen, Mayor of the City of Delaware, a nonprofit organization.
Representative Kendra Johnson, 5th District.
Alice Davis, Delaware State Housing.
William Coast, Orange, Black Island, Delaware.
Ashley Dawson, DSHA.
Melissa Fulton, DSHA.
Michelle Statham, DSHA.
Kevin Simple, King County.
We'll go back around the outside, sorry.
Kennedy, King County IT.
John Anderson, Governor's Office.
Karen Eller, Member of the Public.
Sonia Starr, Housing Alliance.
Well, thanks again for everyone being here today. Do we have any of the coalition members online? I think Saran Cade from the City of Wilmington, Secretary Yateman, and
Secretary Moultrie here.
anyone else from the collaborative online? Raise your hand if you're muted. I think maybe we got the other lines muted. Okay. Okay, so we're going to start with after our last meeting where we heard a presentation from the Housing Alliance on its blueprint, as well as a presentation from Dr. Mitro at the University of Delaware, about to sort of analyze the results of the program and funding survey we had done over the first few months of this collaborative's work. We sent out another survey, sort of trying to understand where people's minds are in terms of alignment around the recommendations that we put forward. So first, we'd like to present that back to you, and Alex will walk us through that.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. First off, thank you to members for your participation in the collaborative, but also on this survey that Ritzy sent out. I think, we're about 4 meetings in, and we've got multiple surveys. So, I know you all have very, very busy schedules. And sometimes those deadlines are longer, sometimes shorter, but, we get a really good response rate just about every time. So I appreciate everybody's participation in that. So kind of looking at this specific survey, again, as I said, we got a pretty good response rate. As I show the survey results, if we want to kind of debrief and discuss as a group, and, if you didn't get the opportunity to complete the survey, we'd love to get your input and insight as well in terms of, what options you'd like to prioritize. And so here's a glimpse of the survey results. And so you see the different options we presented and which ones were selected by collaborative group members. And this is just another kind of way of looking at it. So you see the first place option, the option with the most votes was to implement a statewide emergency rental assistance program for homelessness prevention and eviction prevention. So there seems to be a strong, sort of interest amongst collaborative members to, reduce evictions and homelessness through that initiative. The second place was, and I'll go back to, I can't go back, but second place was establishing a Hope Center style operation in Kent and Sussex County. As well as third was expanding street outreach and encampment response. So, a strong interest in collaborative members kind of at that, sort of shelter ground sort of perspective. And then the other sort of trickle in after that. So those were the top three. The rest in order of prioritization go investment in housing focused case management capacity and supports, improving system coordination and data sharing was an option a few folks responded with, and then strengthening access to mainstream benefits and services. Some of those we listed were workforce development, transportation, childcare, financial coaching, et cetera. And so before I kind of move on, I just kind of wanted to get general feedback on these responses in terms of, could be anything from what did your respective agency identify as a top priority, but then also, broader, is this what we expected in terms of our group, in terms of the sort of distribution of votes?
That's just a quick question, and it's really directed at Matt. Because, well, I know our task at hand is emergent, it's like actual literal homelessness and services and some of the interagency, right? So my question to you, because you've helped refocus a lot when we are other ways. So is in your opinion, does emergency statewide rental assistance, is that a mission creep? Does that make sense? Like you want us to work on services for people that are experiencing homelessness. So they've already gone through and been evicted or lost their housing and things. But it's such a huge part of the continuum, so that was a really hard one for me to answer because it's like, well, that's really what we need. But are we trying to focus just like they've already lost that chance type of thing? Does that make sense? Because you kept us sort of focused on, right?
Tried.
Yeah. I know it's hard to do that. But I guess that's because I do think it's such a big piece. It's such a big piece of this, preventing it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's a good question. I also think that it is, regardless, so I hesitate to think of it as mission creep because it is such a big part of, and so directly going to impact success. If we don't turn off the faucets in Rachel's bathtub analogy, then yeah, the bathtub's going to keep getting
right.
Yeah, I think it's hard to call it mission creep. I'm not sure that right now I'm as focused on that from sort of a recommendation standpoint. I think that might require a little bit more work from us because so much of that is done outside of the membership of the collaborative. And so when we've done our surveys and we've done our analysis sort of the system, I don't think we got out into that world as much. So that may be something that we really have to think about in sort of our phase 2 is, so maybe we're jumping ahead on the agenda a little bit, but as we talk about how we approach that, is there sort of a subgroup of this collaborative that is focused just on that piece? So yes, I think.
Because ultimately we want to prevent homelessness.
Sure.
Right.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Yes, and you're right. We have talked about trying not to get too far upstream.
Right.
That once you do that, it becomes a really difficult conversation to stay focused on.
Right.
And so how far upstream do you go and which branch and all of that. So yeah, I think it's a good comment. I'm not quite sure that I have an answer for it very specifically, but
I think it's the single most important thing is keeping people from becoming homeless.
Yes.
Seeing it at the Hope Center in a way that it just absolutely, you know, just the costs associated when they haven't gotten the rental assistance, when they haven't gotten, you know, like the displacement costs, you know, those types of things are just, can't even really measure it, you know, in terms of the psychological, you know, everything.
Of course. Yes.
Well, then I think there's a way to think about homeless prevention that makes sure you're focused on targeting resources to people who are most likely to become homeless soon. Right. So again, back to your comment about how far upstream do you go, and maybe that's not a conversation for right now, but I think there are ways to target it to folks that are closest to the edge, so that to the extent you know you're preventing homelessness versus preventing instability, which is also important, right? But not necessarily.
But I think to Carrie's point, like not necessarily the charge of this group. And I think that's where we want to be careful, and I hate to keep picking on our good friends at DHSS because I appreciate all of their contributions and how creatively they were thinking about it. But when they responded with light, you know, that is, I think we're, you know, a good sort of, you know, characterization of how far upstream you can go, and still draw that continuous line. But it does get me. It's actually a conversation that we had this morning. Alex and I were at Family Promise, talking about some of their prevention and rapid rehousing programs, and saw the site of their new shelter. And we talked a little bit about, and Alice, you came up because we have in Home for Good both prevention and diversion in sort of two different pots, and what's the difference? And you know, while on an individual basis, the cost is certainly less, right? If you, to your point, Rachel, if you can say this person was going to become homeless and therefore incur all of these costs to the state and to themselves. But how do you cast, but it's a very wide net that you have to cast. And so, you know, the overall cost is of homelessness prevention. I mean, if you look at the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, formal ERA, that was incredibly expensive, right? So we had, but you were online.
Yeah, well,
Thanks for joining us.
conversation.
You said, I better show up for this, and drove from Wilmington that fast. Good for you.
Don't tell Steve Louis.
So yes, you know, all of that I think is good conversation. So let's think about that as we talk about sort of the next phase of the recommendations and how to address that there. Maybe see if there's anything else on this sort of survey piece that people have questions about or concerns about.
I had, oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I wouldn't necessarily think of it as a line, but more of a circle. And the prevention is the first piece before homelessness and the last piece after you're exiting homelessness. So that's why I think it's so tied. And diversion is prevention, right? You're preventing that homeless. So I think prevention is so critical to the street outreach, because of all the money you have to sink in, like you said, Carrie. Once that act of homelessness, if we could have just paid $250, you know, to keep them in that, you know, that housing situation. So.
My question wasn't related to the conversation. It was on your previous slide. I noticed that DOE didn't have a check on literal homeless, and I had answered the survey, so I don't know if my response came through, because for my program, for making event, they have to be literally homeless. I just wanted to make that clarification.
I think I saw your email. Maybe sent a reminder. I thought it was
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine.
We'll do some digging. Yeah. Any other takeaways? Results? If not now, we can definitely get this kind of continue this conversation at the recommendations portion of this presentation. You can also see in the kind of doc I sent around the table at the beginning of the meeting. Those recommendations are in order of prioritization in the recommendation section. So you'll be able to see that as well. Awesome. So I want to talk about kind of in the executive order language, just revisit what we have to do by January in this report we're submitting to the governor's office in terms of specifics, what we have to include in the report. So here's the exact language from the bill. And as you can see there, point 1 talks about kind of providing general public information, analyses, recommendations, referring to state, federal legislative regulations and policies affecting homelessness, and recommendations that refer to improving the delivery of these homelessness services. The second portion is sort of the physical report itself. It references the January 15th due date, and within this report as well, including the collective activities of the collaborative, the status of services and programs for individuals and families who are homeless. And so, this will be a lot kind of debriefing each meeting that we've had, the 3 meetings we've had, this one and the rest to come between now and that January date. And then including a lot of different, sort of materials we've reviewed that have informed our recommendations, everything from the data presentations to, just even some of our homelessness campaign listening sessions, just collectively sort of providing that information, everything that helped us inform the recommendations we provide. And that last bullet, examining the feasibility of and making recommendations for the creation of the successful Hope Center model in both Kent and Sussex counties. We'll get to that as well and include that in the recommendations. So, so with this draft that I supplied everybody, this is kind of what we're going to be going through. And so hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll see a lot of this reflected in the draft outline we've put out. So, the doc that you have in front of you. Yes. And so, that's what Director Heckles is going to get into in terms of what that outline is going to consist of, both in the sections and the content, and then, kind of weave into the recommendation portion and talk about what our recommendations are going to be. And so all feedback as we go throughout this, sort of report structure section is welcome.
So when we were thinking about the best way to make a report, rather than thinking about it as I think reports from this kind of group tend to be, with a 40-page minimum and letters and data and all that kind of stuff, we thought we would try to get straight to the point. I don't know if you've noticed that about me, but it's certainly my preference. So we're thinking that this report, or that what we would submit would qualify as a report, and that we would keep it much more brief and probably something in more of a memo format that will summarize the different parts that we'll go through. And so what you have is sort of the outline of what we think that memo should contain. And so I want to walk through it just to make sure that it aligns with the group thinking around what should be included, see if we missed anything. Obviously, spend most time on sort of the recommendations piece, and go from there to hopefully sort of get an approval. I said, look, we haven't really done votes in this group very much and follow Robert's rules, but I think for this, it would be great to have, at the end of this walkthrough, a vote to sort of give us on the staff side sort of the green light to put this memo together and submit it, with the outline having been approved. Does that sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good.
So at what point were we about to go through these recommendations?
Yes. Okay. Well, actually, so we're going to go through the full memo. I expect the recommendations is where we'll probably stop. But if you have anything along the way that you would like for us to embellish or add, this is sort of the outline that you see up on the screen there that we're looking at. And again, the Word doc that Alex provided goes into a little bit more detail than we will on the screen here. But obviously, we recommend just starting with an overview of what we've done, and that's the introduction, restate, sort of in summary, the formation and creation of the collaborative, and its goals. Talk about the membership, and also talk about. I want to keep. I think there we go. Okay, this is what I'm going off of now. Is a little bit more detail of the different sections. I know people are online, so I don't want to move too quickly through these. So maybe I'll just give you a few minutes to read through it, and if you have any questions, otherwise I'll take a bunch of head nods as indication that we can move on. Got one head nod. Seconded. Okay. Let's go on to part two. We thought it was important to talk about the meetings that we had, and the process that led us to these recommendations. And so we would outline a little bit of the agenda of the different meetings. Can include, links or attachment of the meeting minutes, and just outline the agendas from those different meetings. Head nods. Okay. Talk about our outreach and community engagement, our resource-based listening sessions. We held them, really up and down the state, including an interaction with the Wilmington Homelessness Task Force. We were in Milford and Dover and Georgetown, and we have these still scheduled beyond this phase as we continue to sort of get public input. I'm really excited about being in Seaford. It's at the Resource Center. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Redemptive City, the Day Center.
The Day Center in Seaford, and that's on the 16th. So we'll talk a little bit about in this memo about that process of that engagement in person. We've also had the ability for members of the public to submit comments and recommendations and thoughts through our website, which includes the distribution of our QR code when we've been at different events beyond just the listening sessions. And this is sort of our recitation of the public engagement that we've had. And I think it's been very good. We've had a lot of not only people coming to our listening sessions and talking to us about, what homelessness looks like in their communities, but also because it's resource-based. We've had some really great presentations by entities that are delivering services in those particular communities. So the Department of Education, that was a fantastic sort of overview of McKinney-Vento and what it does and how it interacts with homeless services. The food bank, we were at the food bank in Milford, so they talked about their programs. So we've also been learning about some of the partners as we travel around. Okay, so recommendations. Part 4. Phase 1, there it is. Okay. So trying to categorize these into three overall categories of reaching people where they are, the emergency shelter and navigation, and exit strategies for people. When we have talked in this group and when we've talked to folks through the listening sessions and in other places, when we get to that limited task, that limited scope of this collaborative, these are the 3 areas that we think we should be focused on in our first phase of recommendations. And again, I think that these are all things that are going to be very interesting to the governor as he forms his legislative and policy and budget agenda, as well as to the legislature. So we're glad to.
Why if you look over here, I heard like there's this legislature, I just.
You are the legislature. But I hope that the legislature is interested in some of the things we say at least. Whoever they may be. So these are so let's start with phase one, reaching people where they are, improve outreach for literal homeless, revitalize and reimagine the coordinated intake process and data collection, and consolidate the administration, investment in homelessness prevention programs.
Is literal homeless like an actual saying?
Yes,
It's like an actual thing.
It's defined.
It's defined, it's a defined term. Okay.
it is a defined term. And you know,
Seems a little redundant, but literal homeless.
Well, because couch surfing wouldn't count, right?
Department of Education has a different definition.
gosh, it's all there.
I'll take the
At the federal level, there are two different definitions, right? There's the McKinney-Vento and the HUD definition.
Gotcha.
And I think this is also to sort of address some of the issues that we just talked about in terms of prevention not going too far upstream.
Right.
And I think that's, and listen, so these are notes.
Yeah,
right?
so I guess I'm just trying to get an understanding. So the definition of literal homeless would be individuals who are like couch surfing and things like that. What would it? So
Rachel says it very well. Not fit for human habitation.
So people sleeping in emergency shelters, people sleeping in transitional housing for people experiencing homelessness, people sleeping outside on the street in their cars or other places left for habitation. Like that.
gotcha. Okay.
So that's actually my question.
Surfing, living with family, right? I mean,
Right,
even-
living
even
with
someone
family,
who-
double up, at risk of losing their housing, those are all like not.
All right, that's perfect. And so I guess the follow-up to that is, I know we've been trying to kind of draw a line between the needs of the literal homeless as well as mental health services and things of that nature. But you know, obviously Wilmington is so intricately intertwined. You know, we don't have a lead here from DHSS, and or at least in the document. So when you
Yeah.
put agency leads,
Yeah, I noticed that too.
it's no DHSS isn't listed.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
So-
I was gonna say.
Oh, I think so.
So I know we probably want to put them in there. No, they were at the last meeting. I just
Oversight,
said they weren't
oversight.
In there.
Sorry, DHSS.
If they weren't going to say anything, I probably shouldn't. But for us, I guess it's, you know, all of these are incredibly important. The exit strategy one is the one that stands out for me personally, because we talked to a lot of folks. I know you probably heard of, we talked to the Homelessness Council. A lot of them have been in some of the centers throughout the state and have been dropped off in Wilmington. I think there's this impression that Wilmington has all these resources of beds and things of that nature. So some folks may get sent there or may go there seeking service with, you know, Manual Dining Hall or any of the other locations. And, you know, there was a conversation related to the idea that a lot of the federal funds have a requirement that you have to let folks out, and has to be some type of exit strategy, which includes them going someplace where there's a bed available for them. And so what we've been hearing from Father Lehman and some of the others is that their folks are being dropped off there, but there has not been any coordination with them to determine that there is a bed available.
Right. Well, Reverend Lehman doesn't work in the system either.
I know he doesn't work in the system, so that's even more of a reason
Right.
why.
And he has a
people
lot
should-
of barriers to get into.
Which is even more of a reason why these people shouldn't be sent there without any type of coordination, because there is no, you know, they aren't in the
Because there's no
system.
place for them to go.
Yeah.
Okay, but that doesn't mean they just dropped off. in
Well,
the
no,
city.
but I think that's a little bit of, I mean, I don't know. I don't.
I wouldn't say that that's not happening. I'm just.
I think it's happening. but
Yeah,
I'm
and
just
so
saying
all I'm saying is that we probably have to tighten that up, especially if our goal is to keep people from falling back into homelessness. And so, you know, what that exit strategy actually looks like, details wise.
Exit, do you mean exit from like institutional settings?
Exit from institutional settings and transitional homes, et cetera. What does that look like? Are we dropping people off in a scenario where
At all the shelters.
they're going to get more help, or are we just dropping people off on the corner of Popular Street because that's where people feed the homeless?
Yeah, I mean, there's.
Okay, but I get it. I understand the reason as to why, but I think there needs to be a strategy.
So where would you like them being dropped off?
Again, I think that there should be a strategy. I'm not saying that, they should be disregarded, but the existing strategy of just dropping people off
Oh, it
at
doesn't
front
work.
of Popular Street doesn't help them or anybody else.
1,000,000%. That's why we're trying to figure it out, right?
I want to, right, hold on to the exit strategy comment too, because I want to make sure that we're going through these in order. I think that was,
Yeah, I know I jumped to 3.
and I think there's a difference between your exit strategy and that exit strategy. So I want to make sure that we get there. So don't let me forget that, but Mayor?
So, Mr. Cade,
Yes, sir. How you doing, Mr. Mayor?
your boss called me a month ago. He was upset because he was told that we were putting people on transportation and dropping them off in the city of Wilmington.
I don't know about city of Dover, but specifically
Well, he called.
some behavioral health entities that we have spoken to directly who have told us that they drop people off in
So
the city of Wilmington.
let me make it very clear, we have not done that. But on another point, reaching people where they are, I took it upon myself to go around some of the folks that are sleeping in and around my library, in and around City Hall, and walking through. And you would be surprised how many people are not native Delawareans. One of the issues that I have with homelessness, the issue of homelessness in Delaware, I'm a Delaware boy because I believe we should take care of Delawareans first. And I don't know how we address our homegrown issue without having the issues that you're having, that people are coming from other places. And I think that, maybe I'm wrong to say this, but, I'm a Delawarean first person. I have compassion for other people, but it seems that people are dropping them off in Wilmington and Dover and Milford and Georgetown. And I don't know how we eliminate that problem, but it should be Delawareans first that we compare.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard to get into that because you don't know where, how do you tell somebody that you can't serve them because they're not from here originally? I don't know how that works. All I know is when they get to the city, we don't control social services. And neither do you guys. And so a lot of these individuals, we try to get and direct services to them. In some cases, they don't want our assistance, and they really require some significant assistance beyond just getting them into a home or a place to live. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to separate the two between the family whose, parent lost their job and they're, down in their luck and we're trying to find housing for them versus someone else who needs significant wraparound services to go along with the fact that they don't have housing.
And I think there's a little bit of chronology that we're sort of breaking out here too, right? I mean, the improve outreach, this is about, again, reaching people where they are, and having a set of people who are, trained and educated and skilled at doing that.
Mhm.
Even the people who generally refuse service in other places, there are ways to continue to work with them to try to bring them into this. We can't do anything, hardly anything, for people who are just living in a tent in the woods behind the library, right?
Yeah.
You have to bring them in. And so, and that's the visible piece of this too, mostly, right? When people think of homelessness, that's what they think of. They think of people at the stoplights or or sort of encampments or things like that. And so we have to bring them into the system. Otherwise, there's just really hard time.
Yeah.
And they're resistant a lot of the time. They really are. Some of that is a reflection, I think, on the system that they are being asked to enter into, right? So phases 2 and 3, really, we're talking about trying to improve that system. So, right, but it's also just, there's a way to go about that. And I am not educated and skilled and trained on how to do that, but I know that there is a way to improve our outreach so that people are more likely to come into the system. Yes.
If this bullet is, so I guess my thing about this is just trying to be clear about what it means, and so maybe it's just a language thing. So is this intended to mean street outreach for people who are sleeping outside?
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to
Because if it is, then I think we should just language it a little bit to make that clear, because I read this, because if you read this, I guess without context of this conversation, it just sounds like going and doing outreach to homeless folks who maybe are at a shelter somewhere, or really, because literal includes folks who are sheltered. So I just wanted to get clarity on what was intended by it.
And to your point, the survey, one of the top 3 were outreach to street homeless.
Right.
So
So is this street?
I just want to make sure that we're clear when we say this.
Very good. Yep.
That is an important
Yes.
component.
Yes, that is what is intended here.
Okay.
Now, I don't know that that's the limitations of it. I mean, you're the expert. When I've been looking.
That's why I was asking the definition of
When I've been visuals.
Yeah.
trying to do better.
Well, that's why I was a little confused by it too, because
Correct.
No, I think because my vision has been more of a street outreach concept.
getting people who are sleeping outside, inside somewhere,
Yes.
wherever that is for that person.
And back in the day, like when the example of the Rick Van Story Center in Wilmington, they were like a day center. I could call them and say, there's a guy sleeping behind here, and they will already know that person.
They got the passport.
And they would like, hey, come and get a shower, get some coffee, let's talk. There was a relationship built.
Yes.
So that is what gets your folks that are getting dropped off in Wilmington, is that they form a relationship. And they're more apt to come in. Now, they still might not want service, but after maybe a couple, months of coming in for a shower and charging their phone, they might be interested in that and be able to get an assessment to see if they qualify for permanent supportive housing, which is what, would provide them to get them off the street of Wilmington.
I totally agree with that. I'm just saying it sounds like a partnership. And so if one group is dropping people off to another group to build those relationships and take them to the next stage, and there is no communication, that's not a partnership. And so all I'm saying is I agree with how you're presenting it, that maybe it should be a continuum. If we have support services available, but currently that's not happening. Folks are just getting dropped off. In some cases.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I do think part of the issue is that there aren't those services available.
Correct.
Right, and so sometimes there are services available that people don't want to take advantage of for a multitude of different reasons.
Correct.
In some cases, it's like, will you go to this 3-day detox? Well, no, I'm just gonna be back out on the street. What's the point, right?
Correct.
So sometimes the type of service doesn't make sense, but sometimes it's that service isn't available,
Correct.
right? And anyway, so I think it's a combination of all things,
Yeah.
but like, we see it all the time with, like, I was just talking to someone, again, not news to you, this is what you're saying, but like, even like the Theros tent village in Sussex, like they have people who have to leave to go to the hospital drops them back off, puts them in an Uber, takes them back to the tent, and they have like open wounds. Right, like, and so also just including in their healthcare systems. And they can't live there, but there's literally nowhere else for them to live.
Yeah.
And so what's the solution to it better?
Yeah. We get a lot of folks who get discharged from Wilmington Hospital, and I live a block away. And they get discharged from Wilmington Hospital. They ended up in there because, someone saw them passed out on the street for whatever reason. They get discharged, and they just wander up Washington Street. In some cases, still with bandages on them, and they're right in front of my door. So, and they don't have anywhere to go. And so, to the extent that some of these exits, and I know we're not being too specific, but I think you're right. Exits from healthcare, health facilities, hospitals, exits from some of these shelters, places where these individuals end up either by choice or by happenstance. We should be coordinated on what the exit for those folks look like. It can't just be dropping them off at the bus stop right outside the hospital and good luck with life.
I appreciate all of that, and I think that helps us to sort of characterize this recommendation. recommendation and be specific, because I think that it was intended to be maybe less than what this conversation wants it to be. I think that maybe we need to find a different word. Reentry has been used in the DOC context. Transition planning out of health care facility, things like that. That is the. I do think we need a deeper dive on a lot of that. I don't know that that is something that we are particularly making a recommendation on now. Not saying that it's not an issue. I don't know that we have a solution or that we have figured that out quite enough to include it here. But I
put a recommendation and say, come up with a solution.
Yeah.
I will.
Well, yeah.
I mean, because we do that in all the other places. We say, come up with a plan,
Yes.
come up with a process, come up with a strategy. So we don't necessarily have an answer for those, but we're setting out in a directive for someone who's responsible for these things.
I think
to
part
come
of
up
the
with a
challenge with
solution.
that is that no one person is responsible for it. And so again, I'm not saying we shouldn't add it.
I agree
I'm just
with
saying, like, just being in these conversations for forever.
Yeah.
Like you got like the DOC people that have their own thing. They can't keep people in prison when they're supposed to be released,
Mhm.
right? Then you have, everyone has, and then the healthcare systems have a totally different, whether you have Medicaid or not, like to when you can.
It is a collaboration of
Then you
different
can't force
departments and
people to stay in
agencies.
the hospital. They can leave against medical advice. And so one of the things that I have come to, and I'm not saying this does not address your issue, so I'm not trying to be smart, I promise. But one of the things, because it's a now issue, it's an urgent issue. But when I'm thinking like long-term, I think one of the things that I just keep coming back to is like, if we're focused on getting people into permanent supportive housing, then when they are sick and go to the hospital, come out, they have somewhere to go. If we're focused on expanding rapid rehousing and getting more, if we're focused on like preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place, and that reduces the number of people becoming homeless, then they have a place to go back to when they leave the hospital, when they leave recovery. So I do think part of the discharge issue is the fact there's so many folks who are homeless. And if we're reducing the number of people experiencing homelessness, then people will have a place to go when they get. So I know that's like a long-term, not immediate solution, but I do think that it's kind of built into the solutions.
I think one way to resolve this too is that one of the reasons I wanted to sort of overlap at this meeting are I hope we get there, overlap at this meeting, sort of this first set of phase one recommendations, and then also describe our initial conversations about how we sort of reform and recreate this collaborative to address those issues, right? So I'm not sure that I would like to, because it's somewhat open-ended, include that as a recommendation, but I think it is another piece here where we say, and now the collaborative is going to, leave these things out there and work these things, but address these other issues. And that's the next phase of our conversation today, hopefully, is what are those next things? DOC discharge. We've got Department of Labor that's a member of the collaborative. How do we want to, talk about, the job issues? We've talked about data transparency and sharing and collection.
As long as we got something in there, and as long as we got something in there that stipulates that, substance abuse and mental health over at DHSS plays a major role in the work that we're doing in this homelessness conversation. And that some level of engagement when it comes to exit strategy or onboarding or vetting at the front end. Because a lot of these folks who are doing work, who are trying to help people get into housing, they also may not necessarily be equipped with all the substance abuse and mental health services that are necessary to solve their population needs. And so then you end up saying, okay, well, I can't serve you. And you end up being like you mentioned with Reverend Lehman. Reverend Lehman is the same way. If you're on drugs, if you're on alcohol, if you do any of those things, you can't be here. Very high bar of entry. And that leaves a lot of folks out. And so
can we, just for our purposes,
I don't want to hijack all that. That's the last part.
Your time is up.
My time is up. I'm seeing my time.
So just so that we're, just so we can have some clarity, let's call that though discharge and transition planning, so that we're clear that it's, because when I talk about exit strategies here, I'm really talking about we've put someone in a shelter how do we exit them out of that shelter? And that's something that we have heard from the Hope Center and from every other place that we've been. Sure, we can house them in an emergency shelter for X number of days or months or whatever it is, but what do we do? What do they do next? And that's really when I'm talking about exit strategies for our purposes, that's what I mean by that. So I want to call that something different so that when we do get to that piece of discharge and transition, I don't know if there's another better term of art for it, but I'm going to placeholder, just call it that for now. So bullet number 2.
Oh, no.
Bullet number 2. So this is, and maybe it's helpful then for us to, in addition to the bullet, sort of talk a little bit about what we are intending by a sentence here. And this is really, to me, how do we make sure that we are figuring out a way to correct and improve and make work the centralized intake process. I think we've heard a lot about where and how it is not doing what it needs to do, and it is not serving people that are seeking services, people who are referring people to seek services, and people who are trying to provide those services. But the concept is good. The concept of having a centralized system by which we maximize the homelessness services delivery system is a good idea. So the idea here is what changes do we need to make and how do we make that better, and not just sort of discard it completely.
Here's a good question. What is meant, 100% agree. I think that's a community system-wide, DHSS, DSHA, everybody in the room vision that needs to be reestablished.
Yes.
How it works best. What is meant by data collection?
Yes. I think
Data collection.
so. I think this is also then the HMAS side, and
So the-
distribution that, there's some really interesting work that's being done at the state level about sort of sharing of data. This is maybe a little more academic. I think Dr. Matros really gonna love this piece.
But it's not about data collection specific to coordinated intake. It's.
I think more broadly, like how, yeah, and maybe that is a separate piece, but I think, I don't know.
Data.
But the idea being, and actually this might be something that falls better into the what will we do next segment, because I think that there's some really interesting data sharing opportunities among state collected data, whether it be through DSS and other divisions at DHSS or the public housing authorities and DSHA. If we follow Matt through the system, where can we see overlap and where do we see Matt showing up in different programs, data and things like that I think could be really interesting in terms of from an academic standpoint, but also then to inform future programmatic
And
change.
help the client and the end user to know where they are, where they've interacted with the different systems because they don't talk.
And I don't know whether or not we are going, not short term, at least be able to get to using that. That seems like the ultimate goal would be, you don't have to redo all of the applications. It can be information that is shared, but I think we're still a step or two away from that. I think just getting into availability of and having access to different entities that are all doing this work and their data is the first step of that.
I think, so the data for me is two very separate things.
Yeah.
That we just flushed out. One is to understand the problem so we can have a system that meets the need. And the other is so that for the person, so that they're doing the next step, so that we're not making them retell their story to every single person and move them through the continuum of care. Because it takes a lot to identify when working in vulnerable populations. And that comes with the HIPAA and all those honoring things that are the reason why it isn't so easily shared is for good reasons. Because people blackball, people say, oh, nope, that one was a bad one, wherever. So that's the reason why it hasn't happened. But they're very different, but very important, I think, in creating the system to be strong.
So let's cut the sentence off there at coordinated intake process with an understanding that that may mean, a data component of it, but is also talking about the referral. And again, my mind works chronologically. So if we are doing outreach and we're improving that under bullet 1, bullet 2 is, so then what do those folks do? Well, there's a coordinated intake process, and that is reimagined and revitalized through this recommendation and implementation of it. And we go from there, right? So let's take off the data collection so we aren't muddying the waters in terms of what that looks like. I think that data collection, transparency, and analysis is a great phase 2 subcommittee. So let's take that second piece off. Anything else on that one? Coordinate the administration and investment in homeless prevention programs. This is bullet 3. This is the one, quite frankly, where I have a little less comfort with this being a recommendation because I don't know what that might mean right now. I think that the others are relatively, defined tasks for us to accomplish afterwards. I'm not sure that we have as much information about this. My personal sort of thought on this as we have done our research and surveying and public outreach is that it's a very fragmented system. And some of that is coming from folks even at the, sorry, I'm not supposed to look over there when I said the legislature. From the legislature say, well, who do I call about getting this person help? And right now the answer is kind of like, well, here's a list of 20 different places.
Right.
And that's not a best path for us moving forward. There's a lot that goes along with consolidate the administration of, but I think that it's something that we need to figure out how to not have our answer be, you need access to these this type of program in this emergency and very time sensitive issue. And here's a list of 20 people you can call. Okay. Who may or may not have money, who all have different programs that cover different types of people in different parts of this.
And you may not be accepted because of your criminal background. I literally suspect that issue.
For homelessness prevention.
I don't know if it was prevention. No, it wasn't prevention. No,
Okay.
he was already living. He was living behind, he's living at the bus stop behind, what's the casino out there?
Delaware Park.
Thank you, there. Yeah, and someone gave him my number. And he
That was
called.
Alex.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. You dropped him off there, didn't you? Said, "Call
I
him,
said,
Johnson."
I said, you got to
You got to Delaware Park.
I said, take me to Delaware Park.
Okay, I think so. Anyway, yes, I think that's the point is between bullet 2 and bullet 3, having consolidated intake process into the system is really important. That all 3 of these bullets are really about making sure. I think the 3rd bullet is a little bit different than the first 2. The first 2 is really about going out and finding people and intaking them. And the second one is actually a program delivery recommendation, which is, I think, different than the first 2, but it's also just a very fragmented system or more consolidation coordination. I think is important.
The way the state ran your emergency rental assistance program, where you gave it to like community navigators, I mean, that we knew exactly who to send people to. I mean, and there was a ton of money. So, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, you can see what a system like that, the impact, how many people it saved from eviction. It just was amazing. But it was a ton of money, like 100 million. I mean, it was crazy amounts of money. I don't know if it's 100 million, but it was a lot, close to it probably, right?
Yeah, I know that we were burning over $1 million a month
Yeah.
out of that program.
It was just amazing, where you can just say, here's the list. They'll help you with this. They'll give you the full amount. You won't have to call the state service center, Friendship House, and right now I'm working with somebody that needs $400 to get in. I mean, it's just
And the answer is here are these 20, right? That's, I think, the problem
Yeah.
that we're trying to address
to
here.
but you already see it as practice, which is the way the state did it with the community navigators. So you don't have to reinvent it. It's there. Funded.
I'm wondering if maybe, we can be a little clearer on the action. So like both the first bullet and the third bullet just sound kind of like mushy, like I don't totally know what they mean. Like, what does improve mean? Does it mean we need like more street outreach workers? Okay. Then I don't know if we could like be clearer, like,
We can be clear.
because I think a number can mean a lot of different things, like we need more street outreach. Is that funding? Is that, and as you said, training and best practice, like what is it that would improve street outreach? And same, I guess, with the third bullet, I'm wondering if you're clear to say like the state should invest money in a homeless prevention program that is administered in a consolidated and organized manner, but like call out that there needs to be the word investment is in there. It's just not super clear, I guess. Is that in an action oriented way?
One for one.
I don't know why I'm looking at Representative.
I know, I'm laughing. I mean, no, I get it. And I'm only laughing because I'm set on 100 million task force citizen and recommendations and literally, I don't want to say anything about my colleagues, but sometimes things have to be crystal clear and should not be ambiguous so that we can be pointed in the right direction. And so sitting on task forces with my colleagues and with the community, we did just that. We came up with recommendations that are so clear that you can't muck it up.
One-stop shopping. That's what we're looking. One point.
Or three-stop shopping, maybe there's one place in each county, but yes.
No, but I mean, if it's one-stop shopping in Newcastle, it's the same as it is in Kansas.
Yeah.
And we will have these signs that everybody operates out of. You just have one point of contact. And that's the way that it should be.
I will say, I think one of the benefits of the way the homeless prevention is currently funded, aside from Home for Good, which isn't state money, is it's mostly not state money. Like almost all the folks who are doing prevention, it's like money from churches, money from like organizations that raise money, like charity groups. And there's like some CDBG, but again, not state. So like this is a place where the state doesn't really invest money at all currently. So I don't know. I'm looking at you again, Representative Johnson.
No, you're not allowed to. No.
Don't look
No.
over there.
But I think that's actually a really good, maybe thought to transition, because some of the conversations that we've had around the Hope Center concept, especially as we've thought about sort of envisioning them in Kent and Sussex counties, is that they can also be hubs for this type of work.
Which we did that at the Hope Center. We did the
Yes.
assistance at the Hope Center too. We did that.
That's right. You were one of the.
We were one of the community navigators.
Yes.
And we had outside people come.
Yes. And some of that is thinking of Hope Center, Newcastle County, Kent and Sussex as physical things, and some of it is as less tangible things. So especially as we create a physical space in Kent and Sussex, how is the Hope Center concept used to streamline service delivery? And I
Point of entry and access for that.
correct. And so, and as we develop the Hope Centers in Kent and Sussex and work with the Hope Center in Newcastle County, finding, so operating money is a big deal. That is bullet number 2 under 2.
Also,
Okay, so
Secretary
let's
Davis
turn
has
to
raised his hand on Facebook.
Oh, okay. So that may be about the navigators. Okay. Do you want to, can Steve talk?
I have been known to be able to talk and be told to shut up a lot, actually.
That was a technical question.
I got you. No, so I was going back to the third bullet under number 1, and it kind of just goes to what everybody was saying, from the mental health and substance use issues to housing and what's prevention versus not prevention and all that. So when you're talking about consolidating the administration of the homeless prevention programs, we actually do put aside some state funding in our department to help the families that are already involved in our child welfare system, juvenile justice system, or prevention and behavioral health. So as we're working on the other issues, we have some money that we use to maybe make up for arrears in utilities, or pay a utility, or pay a month's rent or something like that to help keep them from becoming evicted or moving. And I would not want to give up that freedom that we have in this department to help those families. So I just want to say, as you're talking about consolidating things, I don't know if it's the resources or just the administration of, like, I really don't feel eager to give up that pot of money we use to help the families that we're already working with into some consolidated larger entity that I then couldn't control.
Right, and so some of that may be mapping and just a better way of doing it than, 20 different referrals. So I think you're talking about a pretty closed loop there. They are clients of the department. It's one of several series of supports that you offer to them. And I think that is different than someone who is on the outside of that circle looking for that kind of assistance. But I think I understand the point. Sure. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So Hope Centers, this is primarily, I think this will be a budget question at the end of the day, right? How do we support Hope Centers in all 3 counties to operate? And these operating funds ought to be just that, operating money, so that those 3 entities have the ability, because of that operating subsidy, to really create low barrier and flexible shelter and navigation services for the people that they serve. So that's one piece as an emergency shelter for the Hope Centers. The second piece then is that navigation piece. I could see an environment where we have, I guess, if you want to call them navigators from bullet 3 of number 1, that maybe they're housed at the Hope Centers. They have an office there. They take phone calls. They answer web, intakes, but maybe are there as a resource too. And the Hope Centers operate as that sort of, that resource and navigation piece for different programs as well.
Yeah, so this bullet is concerning to me just because I want to learn a little bit more about what the Hope Center in Sussex counties means for the counties, just in terms of what our responsibility. I mean, Newcastle County, really drove the Hope Center and has made it so successful. And I'm just curious what does that mean that Sussex County will be that responsible designated?
Are you volunteering?
So this is my question.
Oh,
I'm concerned about my
Make
capacity.
sure it has the question mark at the end of it.
Well, that's what I mean though. I don't know what that means.
So these are I know our administration has lots of questions about just what does that mean? Obviously, we would be involved, but what capacity and what funding and the operations that Newcastle County needs for that center is tremendous. So I just hope for it.
And I think that the county, Newcastle County, I mean, the fact that we own that building, it's so big, like nothing of that, you know what I mean? It's because that building was available.
Sure. No, I get that.
You know what I mean? And it,
So I do think that the Hope Center concept can look different in the different parts of the state, and try to accomplish the same the same objectives. In Kent County, I mean, Dover makes sense to cover sort of the middle, third of the state. In Sussex County, I don't know if you know this, but it's the largest county east of the Mississippi. Maybe it needs two. Maybe it needs two small. Isn't that weird? Yeah. There's just Essex County back to the day. Maybe it needs two smaller, an eastern and a western. I don't know. But I think the concept here is to make sure that we have a emergency shelter in the Hope Center, Newcastle County concept that is low barrier and flexible in terms of timeline. We don't have enough of that in Sussex County. We don't have enough of that in the state in general. And so it's not to try to push the existing system into that model, but to make sure that model is implemented as sort of a foundation of the full system. So to the extent that there are shelters in operation, I don't think we're looking to change what they do, but sort of acknowledge that there are gaps in the system as it currently exists. And so creating a Hope Center on the shelter side is about making sure that people who don't fit into the system in other places have a place to go. And then also provide that sort of central hub for the system as it's implemented in those areas. And I believe, my expectation is that this is not something that Kent County and Sussex County are going to buy a building and do the same way that Newcastle County did, to answer your question. I believe that this is where the state will be more involved. We will certainly partner with the counties and make sure that it's something that works for those counties, but I do believe that the state will be more involved in that process. I don't know exactly what that means right now, but yes.
Just a reminder that was done with a lot of ARPA.
CARES Act.
CARES Act.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the only reason we were able to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Well, that's why,
It's not the only way to do it.
not the only way.
way to do it. But I'm just saying at that time.
It's not the only way, but it's something to think about when you're trying to mimic something, or mimic, better word, something that was done with resources that you won't have. And so it goes back to your point about recognizing that it's going to be a little bit different because we don't really have those resources.
There's other money for USDA after all.
Well, we're just not going to look at the legislature.
Kendra, I was trying to give you a little bit of a breather room.
So I don't know if you all are aware that Senator Buxton has, who's our homegrown senator, has the idea that we need to put a detox center or center in Dover. We already have a building, if you would just give it to us. And
I have comments about that. Go ahead.
And one of the things that I think that you could reach out, because a lot of homelessness is caused by addictions, is that we have that opioid settlement money that could help renovate that building to accommodate as a shelter, but also as a location for services. She's right here. But I think that, we already have a predetermined location that would be low cost, low impact. And, with some of these opioid settlement monies, which could be better spent than the first round that we gave out to some folks that didn't use the money that it was supposed to go to. This would actually be something concrete that it would help some of the people that will.
So,
She's not here. I'll have her call you.
thank you. I am aware of Senator Buxton's desire to have a treatment facility. And shelter. And like, I get it, right? And I get it based upon the work that I've done prior to being in the legislature. And what I have shared with Senator Buxton as it relates to the opioid settlement funds, and to everyone, honestly, right? Okay, we use some of that money to buy a building, renovate it, do whatever. How do we then maintain it? And that's what, wait, let me finish, sir.
I was just taking a breath.
No, you weren't. And
I'm an old guy. I had to take a breath.
they don't even believe that.
Oh.
See,
That's pretty much it.
and like that's the state of Delaware does not have a money trees outside, right? And that I can just go out and get some money and, you know, everything is going to be great. And while I know that there is a need, because my entire career has been human services, I know the need exists, but also in operating programs that were funded by the state, I know that our needs still existed and there was always a funding gap. So my caution has always been, if you plan to use opioid money as your startup, you better have a plan to sustain it, because you cannot rely solely on the state of Delaware to make it work for you.
Can I take a breath?
No.
And I totally agree with you, but the major expense is already taken care of because the state of Delaware already owns that building.
That's not a major.
Sir?
The capital isn't the major expense. The major expense is the ongoing
And
operation.
I understand that, but, you know, the prudent use of these funds certainly should go towards some of the people that are suffering from the issues that we're talking about. It's right there. And then, you know, we have to be prudent on how those monies are spent. To date, we've received $28 million. And if I'm right understanding, there's $38 million more from another settlement that should be coming in here shortly. So why not take some of those monies and set them aside in a high yield account that the state can't touch, and use those funds to operate these facilities? And I'm not being critical. Listen, I have a $242 million budget, which is nothing compared to what the states have. And, you know, we just started working on fiscal 27's budget. And so I know the constraints that you have to operate in, but with prudent investment of those monies, if it's legal to do so, you could renovate that building, locate services there, establish programs that can be funded ongoing by an investment of those funds if it's permissible, so that this is ongoing enough. We just want to take the money, disperse it, and go with it and run, so that it's not there. Because the impact of what we're suffering in homelessness, opioid addiction, other addictions that we have in the state is not going to cease. So we should plan to use this money strategically and go. I think that's a great idea to have that building, because the state can open it up and keep and monitor the costs and how those services are actually doled out in the funds.
I'll say one thing, then I'm stopped. I hear all that, and in a perfect world, it would be amazing. As a nonprofit executive director, the state of Delaware doesn't even do what it needs to do right now for its current partners. That is an issue. So why would this project be any different? And then I'll stop.
Because
listen, I'm human services, guys. I'm a nonprofit. Previously, no, because she's like shock and awe. Previously, an executive director, right? Who these nonprofits exist to be partners for the state, to provide the services that the state does not provide. But yet, when it comes down to reimbursement rates, they're not treated like partners. They're treated like someone's walking with their hands open saying, please give me something. And so my point being is, I'm going to shine a light on an already broken system. And I don't disagree with you, but also say like, okay, we do that for that. What does that mean for all of those other nonprofit partners who are out there trying to do similar work, who are not being funded appropriately? And then I'm gonna stop.
And I agree with you. I agree with you 1,000%. So we are a collaborative, right? So if we come up with a solution, we certainly are going to have to collaborate with our nonprofit partners.
Yes.
This is something we can't do for ourselves, and I'll shut up. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go to City Hall now. Go.
Well, I very much appreciate your, your thoughts and your ideas on this. I appreciate, I appreciate the collaboration that's happening right now. And I appreciate Senator Buxton's interest and sort of initiative on this. I don't know if, I guess the thing that has sort of been at odds in my brain about this is the sort of the co-location, the co-objective of drug rehab and homelessness shelter. I don't know if that, and I mean, again, I always look over at Rachel. I don't know if that's a good model or not. I think that both are necessary. If it makes sense to put them together, well, we certainly should consider that. But I'm not sure that I've seen that model much. But anyway, I think that yes, the operating is
that might be more. That might be more of a intake component. You know, someone who a central intake location where they are separating out individuals who might require substance abuse treatment versus individuals who may just require some rehoming.
Right. Yes. So I'm not sure if that model, that's my only, in sort of thinking about Senator Buxton's recommendation and sort of vision for that particular site. That's the only piece of it that I have questioned, and maybe there's an answer to it. But
I would just say that we've had people come to us at the Hope Center and ask to lease the whole floor for detox. And we've actually looked at it because it's a revenue generator. We have to make money to be able to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I think that the whole idea here is the fact that, Sharon's in Wilmington, people are getting dropped off. The Hope Center has 22 different partners that pay. Some pay $1,200 for the stay, some pay 90 days, some pay. We are piecemealing this together like a patchwork quilt, and we have to keep the lights on. So therefore, the 2 million, the deficit is we're constantly worried. Well, should we rent out a floor for detox? Should we, what can we do to do this? We don't have money for this. We don't have money for that. Instead of looking at the person that's coming into the Hope Center and saying, this person needs a long-term permanent supportive housing resource, he isn't going to, or she isn't going to be able to get a job. 90 days is going to be the tip of the iceberg for this person. The system itself, right, in that one of our recommendations is that these Hope Centers, you can't depend on, if we set these Hope Centers up to do the same sort of patchwork quilt that's killing us. I mean, I'm not saying killing us, but it's really hard. Because people are giving limited time. We're looking at the funding source instead of the person.
and
Which
so,
is number one, reaching people where they are.
well, and again, trying to keep on mission, which is hard. And sort of the scope of this group, right? I mean, that's the way I would say it is that the Hope Center has had to deviate from its original intent because it does not get
Revenue for its original.
ongoing operating revenue to do what it is originally intended to do.
Said that so wonderfully.
And that's what bullet 2 is all about.
But that's kind of also the reason why, she brings up a great point. I mean, I know we're trying to put these other entities to the side and say, we just want to focus on this. That's great. But the money is at DSAN. That's who gets a good amount of resources that help provide support for your operations or support for the individuals who are here. So I just want to make note that as we start to narrow the scope more, we're not just narrowing our function, we're also narrowing your lines of revenue to make it operate. And so that would mean that the state would have to invest more in this one line. And again, that was
It's
my
almost
old,
like you were in charge of the budget.
that was my old job. That was my old job. But I'm just saying, it's an added benefit to expand the focus because you do expand the streams of resources that you would have access to make it all work. Whether you do it in a way that waters down your original intent is, I think, what you're worried about, which is a legitimate concern.
What I don't want us to do is suggest that a rehab center is going to be a low barrier shelter.
Right, it's not going to be.
Right.
And
But that doesn't mean it's not needed.
agree. Again, I'm just trying to keep our stars in mind here and say, I think that the answer probably is yes. The state is going to need to figure out how to give operating funds for the Hope Centers to be able to maintain the character of being a low barrier, flexible time place for people to go who don't qualify for those others. And that is another collaborative problem. That is another, that's another sort of set of issues.
And to be clear, that's a huge need for Wilmington,
Agreed.
like lower barrier
Yeah.
options that we can get folks
Yes.
into.
So that's, that is what is intended there. It's a little bit of a narrower focus. The establishment of Hope Centers in Kent and Sussex that are navigation centers for accessing the programs can, locate the referral, the intake, if needed, and if practical to do that in a physical location, but also be a virtual way to do that. And provide the low barrier, flexible time shelter with supportive services that people need, whether or not they qualify for other types of support.
Can you put that into this? Because I don't know that Hope Center is that clear
Yeah,
for someone
yeah.
that's not, but yeah, I think
Sure.
it's a
Can you
resource
define
center.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
just having that be
Yes.
more.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, these are bullets. Yep.
Is the word support intended to mean fund?
Yes, always.
Yes.
So as a non-state government employee, it is not clear to me that that's what support
The
means.
government support always means money.
Um,
They typically don't mean,
We're going to support them to embrace is we're going to support the Hope Center to embrace. So whatever kind of embracing Carrie needs to feel that support.
Is the
And then,
establishment of the.
and operating needs, I think, is actually the key piece there.
So should that include Kent and Sussex too? Because if you're saying establish Kent and Sussex, they're gonna need funding
Yes.
to operate too.
Yes.
So sorry, I know I might have missed the ball on this, because sometimes I can be very literal, but is number 2 intended to mean that the state should fund
Yes.
Hope Centers in all 3 counties?
Yes.
Both the establishment and ongoing operations?
Yes.
Thanks.
We thought we would have an easier time by just having you agree to like conceptual things that fill in, but apparently, should know. Honestly, that's on us.
So is the idea to have these almost like state service centers where you're covering the 100% of the cost, or are you talking about giving each one of them like an operating grant that they have to stay within the bounds of?
So, I think it's tough to say until it's the shelter component, and the delivery of sort of navigation to services. I think it's a little tough. I mean, like Carrie, you just said that the Hope Center is big. We probably don't need the Hope Center entirely dedicated to the low barrier, flexible, serving of unsheltered individuals. But we need some segment of that to be available for that use. And what's happening since, if I can characterize this correctly, is over time, in order to bring in money into the Hope Center, it has had to shave off parts of it.
Well, we have like we have a
to create
respite
revenue.
for
Yes.
Christianity Care, they're our biggest funder basically. And
To-
then
to
we have
attract money.
permanent, but we have permanent supportive housing. I mean, that is part of our mission
Sure.
because we have people that just can't, they're not leaving,
That's
you
right.
know, so they
But
just.
so this is an attempt to kind of like stem that.
Try to do it again when we take what we learned from.
And make sure that it doesn't have to continue to sort of
While at the same time.
make business decisions.
While at the same time trying to figure out, how to make the Newcastle County Center
That's right.
sustainable.
Consolidate state funding sources and collaborate on funding policy. This is another sort of broad statement, but
That was my question I just asked.
We are looking to create that home for homelessness within state government. It is very fragmented. There are several different agencies that are involved in several different things. And to Steve's point from earlier, this is not about agencies serving their clientele. It is about sort of that one place where state funding and policy is coordinated when it comes to this particular sort of segment of the work.
So the idea,
Yeah.
I thought we almost got away with that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. I'm trying to clarify myself. I'm right there with you.
that was very clear, but can I clarify even more for me?
It is a recommendation of the task of the collaborative, so sure.
So the idea being that, again, the state would say, these are the funding sources that we are using to address homelessness. Our policies are that they should use it in this way to best address this.
Correct.
And that would happen in some place in state government.
Yes.
But there's no more definition necessarily beyond that we're recommending, just that there be something like that.
Because we don't have that.
Right.
And I think, the implication here to me, I hope, is
I love it. Just to share.
Everybody would love it.
But the implication here is that we also don't have coordinated and consolidated funding sources. That's very difficult for our partners to manage. And that we don't have coordinated funding policies or the policies that are required by funding. And that's very difficult to manage for our partners. And so this bullet is about trying to fix that. This is not making a statement about which policy or stuff like that. It is saying that we can't even talk about that until we have a consolidated source of funding and the intent to have consolidated policy associated with that funding. Sure. Anything else on that one?
You should have started with that.
So we're saying identify the funding, then build it, or then design it? Or are we saying design it and then search for funding that meets what it is that we want to see? Because if you if you design it based on funding, you give up a little bit of something. So I guess that's the question. Are we talking about designing perfect world what we want to see and then trying to get the state to fund it, or trying to get funding for it? Or are we talking about seeking funding and then building what that funding wants to see?
Well, this is a great example of great collaboration here, because I think we're not clear. Some of these things I think will require us to make budget asks. Others, I don't think that third bullet of the second point is a budget ask. It is an administrative ask.
Right.
It isn't making a budget ask. The second bullet of number 2 is making a budget ask. We need operating funding, right?
Yeah.
So that is something that we will take back and wrestle how we convey that, whether there are budget asks or price tags associated with these things, or whether there aren't. So the others might be mixtures of both. And this in number 2, maybe we've kind of separated those two. I'm not sure. But that's good feedback, and we'll try to wrestle with that. Okay, number 3. There are 10 of these, so we got to move it along here. Oh, okay.
Just 3. That's the last one.
But don't you feel better now?
I was pacing myself. I was pacing myself to 3. I'd have blown my whole load.
All right, so number 3 of 3, exit strategies. And so what's intended here is really to talk to your point earlier. Is that this is exit strategy from the emergency shelter system. And again, we've gone around, we've heard, sure, we can shelter folks, but we don't have, especially right now with the market, the housing market the way it is, it's more and more difficult to have to create exit strategies for people. The way I think of sort of creating the exit strategies is in sort of degrees of depth. And different people enter homelessness different ways, and so we need different exit strategies for each of them. So going from the deepest kind of to the lightest, permanent supportive housing is what we're talking about here is actually acquiring or building or developing 150 units of permanent supportive housing. That is something that is different than the multifamily housing that DSHA is used to developing on construction standards and things like that. But generally, I think something that DSHA is pretty well positioned to do. The idea here is to create some sort of consolidated package of a capital stack that entities that do this and do it well can apply for that all at once. And what I mean by that is we'll put the 4% tax credits in the deal. We'll put because this is rental housing at the end of the day, right? There is a lease, there is a rental housing sort of model for us to follow. We'll go to probably Newcastle County and ask for project-based vouchers. We'll project-base them maybe in Kent and Sussex. We'll find the ARPA funds to fill the gap or use HDF. Like we'll put that package together and say, basically, we feel like these 150 units broken up into different permanent supportive housing locations, but few around the state, should be able to apply for this capital stack altogether, which should make their development a lot easier than asking a developer to come to us and apply for tax credits here and HDF there and vouchers here. We're kind of doing that work ahead of time and preparing it for them.
That's very good. I was literally waiting for some interaction. Sorry. That's what I've been saying for a long time. I love it.
The supportive services to that are
Expensive and unfunded.
not what I was going to say. But she's right. You're right. But what I'm hoping is that capital stack is
Right.
formed in a way that it is, that it's out of that.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to the project basing of vouchers, I think that we subsidize enough on the construction side. With project basing vouchers, you have a relatively good revenue that can support both sort of like the rent and operations and the supportive services. We'll see how that pans out, but I think that's the best model for us moving forward. So again, another degree of sort of then pretty sort of the Goldilocks middle ground here is expanding SRAP to take referrals directly from shelters. The component here that is not probably figured out completely is how do we do supportive services with SRAP in that case. So there may be some, amendments and further recommendations to this, but the idea is that this is someone who does not require sort of the permanent supportive housing setting is, more aligned with a community-based rental subsidy and supportive services going along with that. And the third one being someone who doesn't require either of those two, but does require the security deposit, a couple months rent, and maybe some supportive services to exit the shelter through a grant. Again, here we're talking about expanding and consolidating, somehow figuring out how to make sure that those resources are available in a much more streamlined and centralized way.
So I think that's love them. I vote yes on these, not that we're voting now, but the third bullet I just don't totally understand. So I know you said like consolidate the administration, expand and consolidate the administration. I guess I'm interested to understand more about where that came from. Like where that recommendation came from. Because I don't remember us talking about that much here. That came more out of like community listening sessions, or if I'm not totally understanding it. Because one of the big things with rapid is there's just not enough of it. Like most people in shelter can't get access to rapid and won't get access to rapid even if it's what they need. And most people in shelter rapid would be the best way out. So I guess can you say more about where that came from and like what the vision is there?
For me, it's about sort of the degrees of support that a family needs leaving a shelter, right? I mean, so someone with mental health challenges is going to need to go through the permanent supportive housing pathway, I'm guessing. Someone who, is just income limited for long, sort of the foreseeable future, I think SRAP is probably the way that we would push them. Someone who, entered homelessness and is exiting, without those needs, needs to have access to that shorter term assistance. So it's more about the depth of the assistance and that all three are needed. I don't know.
We haven't really, so the only thing I would just say about Rapid, so again, maybe this is part of that conversation about what that looks like going forward, is we haven't really been using it in that like touch of a way.
Yeah.
Not that, but like it'd be great if we were. As a community, we've really been using it. Anyway, because of the lack of permanent supportive housing and the lack of other housing.
Yeah.
A lot of folks that are getting access to Rapid are folks that need more intensive services than Rapid can provide.
Yes.
And are ultimately staying in Rapid and getting that subsidy for up to 2 years.
Yes.
So again, I think it's also like a reimagining of the role that plays in the community. I just wanted to share that. Okay.
And so permanent supportive housing, SRAP, I'm not suggesting that we would put time limits on SRAP, but I do think that is, again, you hope that any one of these are not permanent in terms of time, permanent in terms of the landlord-tenant relationship. And it's more of a degree of maybe the supportive services and sort of the length of time that we think someone's going to need the assistance. But try to, I think, categorize rapid rehousing as, again, I don't know that we want to put strict limitations on it, but have it not be 2 years, right? Have it be security deposit in 3 months. Or going back and paying off utility arrears, or being a more flexible but lower intensity type of support.
They ended it during COVID. It used to be 6 months or less, you get special permission up to 12 months. But because rental costs are so high, even households that used to be able, you used to think, oh, just a month or two of rent and they can take it over. That's not possible anymore. And so I think that's part of why it became now more for long-term intervention. But it would be nice if it didn't have to be. And I know the VA does it differently. So I'd be curious what the VA is very strict with like 3 months of assistance in their Rapid, I think. So we could also look at like their rate of success and how that's been working. But okay, thank you.
And I would even argue maybe, if you stay with people too, so if we put a year of supportive services of some level, even if the housing assistance is only 3 months and they can, come back in.
Well, they're going to come back to the statewide prevention pool and then it'll be fine.
Perhaps, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Also, does expand, I'm sorry, does it, when you, I'm trying to do, I guess I'm learning state speak. Does expand mean make more of it happen or just use it differently? Because you have expand SRAP, does that mean make more SRAP vouchers happen or more?
Yes.
So expand means.
SRAP doesn't currently take referrals out of the shelters.
No, I know. So I know support means fund now, but does expand meaning?
Also means fund.
Okay, thank you.
It means fund more people.
Okay.
That's what expand is. And state support means fund more of what we got. Expand means more funding for more people.
Thank you.
No problem. I got
I'm
you.
gonna write this. Cool. Thank you.
6 years.
Okay.
Learning this jacked up language that we use.
Yeah. And this is more, sorry, which ones are these? I lost my track of recommendation. So we're linking back to the survey then. Okay. Okay. So that would generally be the bulk of the memo that we would like to have count as our report months in advance of the January timeline, but I think is really important for us. Again, I recognize we're taking some nibbles. I think they're maybe bites.
Can I ask you?
But we're certainly not looking at solving all of the the problems associated with the issue of homelessness. We're focused very much on sort of a subset of that literal homelessness, a subset of the system, making sure that we are filling the gaps in a system that exists and is doing, good work in most situations. We're trying to supplement it in a way that we're sort of creating a foundation for that system too. Because I think too often people are not able to access the system. They're not able to find the help that they need because of one condition or another. And so we're sort of trying to underpin the way that system is working and help people navigate it better.
The only question I have is more of a political one, not necessarily operational. But maybe logical. You mentioned that we wanted to do kind of like a memo when this is over and not necessarily a full-blown report. Do we know whether or not there is an expectation of what the final product is going to look like? Like, does the legislature or whomever have an expectation that they're going to get a full-blown report, and then when they get a more clear and concise memo, they think like, well, what have you guys been doing? I'm serious. I mean, am I off like with as to how your colleagues might take it? Like, am I off as to how your colleagues might take it if they see the memo versus an actual report? Maybe I'm tripping, but
We like Cliff Notes version.
I know you like Cliff Notes version, but you like those specifically for you. That's all I was saying. Is there someone who has an expectation, or is there some expectation that we're going to present more than the memo? Let's be clear. I agree with the memo format. I just don't want to do something that when others, or I don't know how the reporting of what was going to come out of this was laid out, where people were expecting kind of like an in-depth report versus the memo.
Sure. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I support it.
Sometimes I think it's just that I'm getting old.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I support it. I just don't want to do something if, when this was originally rolled
Yes.
out.
Well, so
everyone was
this
expecting to get
is
something.
what the executive order says.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it'll be fine. And if they want something more, then we have till January 15th to do it.
This, again, I think it's great.
Yeah,
I've seen so many in-depth reports get caught on someone's bookshelf and start collecting dust.
I'm just thinking, I don't want to have to go. It's mostly like the data recitations. And, here's a, let's get a consultant to come in here and spend some money on them to give us a flow chart of how things. You know what
I don't. And the only reason I bring it up is if that's the case, then I don't know if you may want to start socializing it with your colleagues. That This is what can be expected of memo coming out to. Nobody's expecting some type of a full-blown solutions for Wilmington schools book this thing that no one will read.
I do like a flow chart, but I don't think you need a consultant to do it. No, seriously, I like a flow chart. But I don't think we need a consultant to.
Right. And I don't necessarily, it's Secretary Martin who keeps saying, we're done admiring the problem. And I feel like a report that is 60 pages long is admiring a lot of the problems before until you get to that, that page of recommendations.
I think it's right to drill down on this. This is.
Get straight to the point.
We know what the problem is.
Yeah.
We know what the problem is. And
We
these are
cannot
recommendations.
solve it all in
starting
this
to-
one. This is one bite.
Yes.
That's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's,
And it seems like this report is actually, I mean, am I wrong that this report is
So you're
direct?
calling it a report?
it's fine.
This memo, well, you put report requirement. But when that is.
Memo means report.
I like that.
It does now.
It does now. So, okay, all right, that's clear. I'm glad I was going to answer. It was good. It was good.
We got you.
Good point. I see my time.
Okay. So any objection to us moving forward with reflecting your comments and concerns and fantastic feedback into this memo and distributing it, when we can get that done? Does the collaborative want to wordsmith, and I mean, it's sort of a question of sort of how much more involvement the membership wants to have at this point, or if we have agreement in sort of principle to these recommendations, will you sort of allow our team to put the final touches on it and green light us to release that. Is that okay?
So I don't want to see it again, but I do think that some, not in a mean way. I just mean, but I do think that some of the clarifying language will be important.
Yes,
to make sure
Especially
that we're-
the street
Yes.
homeless, like,
Yeah.
And we're available too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I just don't want it to like have another meeting.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
no one's agreed, disagree.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
And if you have another one,
Listen, my wife.
if you have another one, Wilmington is very hospitable, you can, roll out the red carpet for everybody. You know.
All right, now
Just have
let's,
someone drop you off.
Just give me an Uber. Give you a
okay, so I'm gonna take that as a yes, and we will do that.
Sorry. Sorry, are we voting at some point on
Do
these?
you want to vote? Okay.
Well, I don't know about right now.
How about a motion?
guess part of what I'm saying,
Make a
and
motion?
I'm gonna pretend like this is going back to Ron's point.
Don't drag me in.
I want to make sure that like all part, like, we don't have representation from some critical folks in the room today. And so I want to make sure that like,
All partners.
I mean, I'm sure you have, but as a collaborative member, I want to make sure that like DHSS and some of the partners that are going to be critical to some of the stuff, like making sure the services money is there for PSH, that type of stuff, are like also. That's my last comment. So I don't know if that's a vote or just, I don't know what that is. I just think that that's important, and maybe you're already doing that. But that's right.
Okay, well,
Do you think we need a final meeting just for a final vote?
He said no.
Or even,
avoid that.
we could do it via email. You could do it via email. I just don't know the public, because this is a public body. I don't know the
Why don't we,
public accommodation that's required.
tell you what, why don't we do this? Why don't we vote to approve it as we've discussed it today? And we will circulate those minutes and ask for anyone who was not able to give their members feedback the opportunity to do so.
Perfect.
Okay.
I make a motion to accept the
Recommend,
recommendations as amended.
second. Okay, thank you very much for the motion and the second. All in favor?
I,
Okay.
Supposed to say those opposed?
Oh, I don't care. No, I'm. All opposed?
Those opposed, call your legislator.
No, there was no more discussion.
oh, Steve's on
And I don't,
Yes,
there.
okay. Is there anyone else online?
Secretary Moultrie. You would say all opposed, and then you just assume that they're on.
Any opposed?
All opposed?
Okay,
Not-
motion carries.
Great. And can I say something really quickly? Thank you.
Yes.
I know it hasn't made you feel at all. So thank you.
It's complex.
And so I know we're at time, but I do want us to just, for the members that are here, to just give us some guidance on what do you guys think phase 2 looks like here? We have a membership that was created during, as a function of the executive order. We intended, very sort of purposefully, that the membership be the funders, quote unquote, of homelessness programs as we understood them to be when the executive order was written. The executive order can change its membership of the collaborative. So we can go that route. We also have sort of thought about more of the housing supply task force model where the membership stayed, but the subcommittees, the working groups that were created brought in people who were concerned about that particular part of this. So that is another way forward. And then I think the question is sort of where, which part of those working groups, or which of those working groups are most important for us to form. if I can, offer what I thought might work best is for us to keep the membership the way that it is, use that task force model, supply task force model where the working groups are larger, that there is a member of the collaborative that sort of takes on leadership of those working groups. And that this collaborative, quite frankly, sort of becomes the place where all of that comes back together relatively infrequently. That it's maybe, we go to more of a quarterly kind of check-in with the work of the working groups, but that in a way, this, what we are actually moving forward is more about the working group work. And that the collaborative is much more about having those groups collaborate, having the collaboratives come back together, receive the recommendations and updates from those working groups and proceed from there. So that was what I envisioned, but certainly open to thoughts and comments. And on a second note, then if we do go down that road, what are the working groups that we need to establish?
I just think you have to have the cabinet agencies and involved, especially if I'm just focusing on this line of requirements here. It seems like most of the coordinating on funding is happening with the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if it's a matter of them being a part of the group who's putting together the system and how it's going to work, since they're going to be responsible for operating it, and essentially they're going to also be responsible for requesting funding for their agencies who need it. And unless that is a priority of theirs, you're going to miss it during the budget process.
Well, not necessarily representative today, but I mean, the state agencies are the sort of the.
But you asked about stage two. Stage two is operationalizing what we're talking about.
Well,
right? Or is it just?
So I think there's two parts, right? And I think it's kind of, so we have to implement those recommendations. And but I'm thinking more about sort of like what else, how else do we go? So if it helps to sort of, demonstrate some of this, the working groups that I could see us creating might be DOE, through this, leading a working group on homeless kids in schools. And, pulling in the membership of that working group that it needs, and then coming back to here and saying, here's the coordination among the collaborative, the members of the collaboration, or in other ways, sort of report back in. At the same time, we might have someone working on data and collection and transparency. We talked about discharge and and transition planning. Tara is on the, she probably ought to head the working group on DOC reentry. The homeless, we could divide this up into probably 20 or 30.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm just saying I would be cautious about segmenting them so much because they're so collaborative. So you mentioned DOC. DOC also has a DOE function internally that's managed by, DOE. They have a transfer. When they do, when they let folks go, they communicate with the Department of Transportation to help people get their IDs. So it's I know we want to break it up into separate working groups. It's just, I just think having those cabinet agencies even involved in each one of those working groups, because they overlap.
So breaking up, but still functioning under the umbrella.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what you said, that the collaborative is where it all comes back to, but one of us should be on a working group.
Right.
Or two,
You might end up having to be on multiple ones
Exactly.
because there's so much overlap.
Yeah, but I agree with the big, because we prove we can get into the details, right?
You have proved it.
Right, but it's critical to get into that, because the details do matter, right? But it's not but we won't get anything done if we do that.
Yeah.
So
I
I
don't
think
want
your
that
idea is.
conversation to happen here. That's the bigger issue.
Yeah.
I don't want this collaborative
Right,
to try to take on
I agree.
the down to the ground level of everything.
And that's kind of my point is like,
But we have to get there too.
You
but
have
there's
to get there.
existing things happening that
Yes.
perhaps
I just think when you start building this system, at some point or another, once, like the task force group has to be the agencies
Yes.
who are responsible and them coordinating with each other as to how the dollars are divided, who's asking for what, and what components are there to, operationalize the stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
On the task.
And so the collaborative becomes sort of the facilitator, the umbrella,
Correct.
the
The guidance, the recommendations.
well, and the cadence, right? Also making sure that things are happening and moving.
But then you need a group that's responsible for actually putting it together and operationalizing it.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily know if we would be the ones responsible for that or the agency. And the folks in the agencies will be responsible for that type of thing.
So like as an example, DHSS figuring out, and DSHA working together to figure out how to expand SRAP to take referrals directly from shelters. That conversation doesn't have to
That's
happen.
not
here.
gonna
It
happen.
doesn't necessarily have to happen in a working group of this body. It is now a recommendation that DHSS and DSHA can
Going to
figure
go
out how to make
together
that.
and work together to make that happen and report
Like,
back.
there may be some things like that where it's not even, not all this is happening in working groups. The recommendations are there.
Right, that's why I'm sort of trying to separate them a little bit, like the recommendations, I think there are some things that are just gonna,
Yeah.
it's a DSHA, it's a DHSS, like
Yeah,
we're gonna
exactly.
push those things, right? And we have the recommendation of the collaborative saying, yes, go do those things. It's the other parts, it's the parts that we acknowledge when we started this process in phase one that we were not going to get to. But now that we have phase one sort of move,
We can go into the.
we can go into the deeper conversations. Part of why I wanted to get I hope that the memo was a report is so that we now have, even more time. And we can focus on next January, sort of having another report of what this longer and quite frankly, harder process is going to be, right? Because it is so much more detailed and it'll be more fragmented. I mean, it's going to be fragmented for collaborative. But with the collaborative sort of being, again, that umbrella and that thing that keeps us moving. So I think we've kind of run out of time to kind of go through a list of what those working groups might be. But we love our surveys and homework. So what do you think? Survey? So maybe there's a way for us to figure out how to get some feedback from the members. I think both about what's needed, but also what they can take on in terms of leadership, because DSHA, as talented as these folks are, and I didn't mention earlier, so thank you all again for whatever Carrie said about me. It's I just show up. But we're not going to staff 20 working groups. We're not going to be able to. And so it will be, an ask of those working groups as we create them to make sure that we have, a leader from the collaborative that can be that lead for the working group with some support as needed. But we're not going to be able to give this kind of.
It may be a worthwhile conversation with the governor as to whether or not he wants to put together kind of a agency working group to respond to the recommendations that are coming from here. Because at that level, you'll be able to have DOE talking to DHSS about data sharing, IT being able to communicate about what that model looks like. It's going to be so much communication between you guys being involved to collect information from not just DOE, but from school districts on homelessness and youth and all that other stuff. I just think you're going to probably need a dedicated internal group.
I'm not sure if that's not what the collaborative is.
Yeah. I think that, yeah.
They just let us be here.
I just don't feel like I hear you, but I just, I don't know how much internal government operational work is being done here versus if agencies
I got you.
are at the table doing it. Like, I get that I want to feel like that, but like we say one thing and then the agency has their own agenda that they're moving towards. And, I just want to make sure that we're all rowing in the same direction.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Understood.
I got the impression the collective is directive, right? Like that from the governor has come to us and wants us to be directed and saying, these are our recommendations.
Always feels.
With.
Right, and that works until it doesn't.
It always feels like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it works until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's like when the cabinet secretary say, okay, this is our priority, and the budget time comes around, and they're making that their priority in the budget, unless the governor is saying that is your priority.
Mhm.
Like, I'm just talking about how you get it.
Yeah.
Actually from concept to
I got you.
implementation, and it's just really hard if we're trying to dictate to cabinet agencies what they should do.
They have to have skin in the game.
If they're involved, they can operate. Yeah, like,
This obviously involves partnerships.
correct.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, we'll keep working on that. This is good feedback. There are some folks who aren't or are no longer on this meeting that I think are important in that conversation. And
Just from past like reports that I've seen, whenever someone tries to dictate to the legislature or to agencies what they should do, it doesn't have the same follow through as it does when they're at the table and they all have agreed under the governor and the legislature that this is what.
yeah. Okay. We'll do a survey and you have a
About y'all.
assignment. Is there
About y'all.
anything else? And this is usually where we also ask for public comment. Those that have hung in there this long. By once? Twice? Oop, okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great work.
Sweet.
I have had, did I tell you that I had my car, like.
You and I met, and talked about doing the improvements there.
And then. Car engine. I had a lot. So they gave me a grant, they gave me a grant, but anyway, Saturday, woke up.
Yeah, gonna be two.
Oh, right there, I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm sorry. I'm
Really?
sorry. I'm sorry.
You did that on purpose. Ah.
Yeah, nominated someone.